Hey guys, tonight we begin with a gate that closes when one horn sounds and opens when another horn sounds, which means someone is controlling access through sound signals that most people don't understand. Or someone designed a system where knowing which horn means what determines whether you get trapped or escape. This is about castle courtyards in 14th century England, those supposedly secure spaces surrounded by gates that move on hidden mechanical pins activated by specific horn patterns that the gatekeeper knows and controls and uses to sort people into categories that determine whether they live or die without anyone understanding they're being sorted. It's not about dramatic sieges or obvious executions. It's about 1 year when a new gatekeeper learns how the hidden gate mechanisms actually work and realizes the horn signals aren't about security, but about controlling who gets trapped in the courtyard when accusations are made, and what that realization reveals about how mechanical systems enforce social hierarchies, how knowing the signals means controlling survival, and how learning what different horn patterns do versus what people think they do is how you understand which deaths are intentional and which look accidental.
Before we begin, let me ask something. If you're the kind of person who thinks about how systems control access, about how knowing the rules determines survival, about the difference between what mechanisms appear to do and what they actually do, you're in exactly the right place. Take a moment to subscribe to Quiet Manor Story if that sounds like you, and tell me in the comments about times you've seen systems that controlled people through information asymmetry, about how they worked. I'm genuinely curious who joins me for these explorations of how mechanical control becomes social control. Now settle in and let's discover what happens when a gatekeeper starts mapping which horn patterns open which gates and realizes the system is designed to trap specific categories of people who don't know the signals that would let them escape.
The castle is Thornfield Keep in Lincolnshire, and the year is 1348. It's medium-sized castle. Baron's residence. Maybe 200 people live here, including soldiers and servants and craftsmen and their families. The courtyard is large, enclosed space, maybe 100 feet square, surrounded by walls. 4 gates provide access. North Gate leads to Main Hall, South Gate leads to Village, East Gate leads to stables and barracks, West Gate leads to servants' quarters and kitchens. Each gate is heavy oak, reinforced with iron, operated by a complex mechanism of pins and counterweights hidden in the walls. The gates can be opened manually by guards turning wheels, or they can be opened and closed automatically through the hidden mechanisms activated by horn signals. The system is supposedly for defense, allows rapid securing of courtyard if castle is attacked. Horns sound, gates close automatically, castle is sealed. That's official purpose. That's what everyone believes. The gatekeeper is a man named William. He's 32 years old and has held this position for 2 months. Previous gatekeeper died suddenly. William was promoted from guard position. He's learning the systems, learning which horn patterns activate which gate mechanisms, learning how the hidden pins work, learning what he's supposed to do when horns sound. That learning is revealing something disturbing about how the system actually operates, something the previous gatekeeper knew, something William is discovering, something that changes what he understands about his position and his responsibilities, and what the gates actually control.
The horn signals are complex. 3-note pattern opens North Gate, 4-note pattern closes it. 2 short blasts open South Gate, 3 short blasts close it. Long sustained note opens East Gate, 2 long notes close it. Quick repeated pattern opens West Gate, slow pattern closes it. These patterns are taught to gate guards, are supposed to be known only by castle leadership and guards, are kept secret from general population supposedly for security, so enemies can't predict gate movements. That's the explanation. That's what William was told. But he's noticing something. The patterns aren't just for defense. They're used daily, multiple times, in situations that have nothing to do with castle security. The Baron's steward sounds horn pattern. South gate closes, trapping whoever's in courtyard. Then different horn sounds. North gate opens, allowing certain people to exit toward main hall. Others remain trapped in courtyard. No explanation is given, no announcement made. Just gates moving on hidden mechanisms. Some people leaving, others trapped. This happens repeatedly. William watches, tries to understand the pattern, tries to figure out what determines who gets trapped and who gets released. Starts to see categories, starts to recognize that the gate mechanisms are sorting people, selecting them, controlling their movement in ways they don't understand because they don't know the horn signals. That realization is disturbing. That understanding changes everything about what William thinks his job is.
He starts documenting, keeps private notes, when horns sound, which patterns, which gates move, who's in courtyard at the time, who gets trapped, who gets released. The data accumulates, pattern emerges. The trapped people are always in some category, accused of crimes, suspected of disloyalty, identified as problems, marked for some reason. The gate mechanisms trap them, hold them in courtyard, then different signals move them to different locations, some to main hall for judgment, some to dungeons through East Gate, some to Baron's chambers through North Gate. The gates are a sorting system, mechanical apparatus for categorizing and controlling people without them understanding they're being controlled. The horn signals are commands, instructions to the hidden mechanisms about which category of person needs to be moved where. William is operating that system, is listening for horns, is ensuring mechanisms respond correctly, is moving gates that trap or release people based on categories they don't know they're in. That's his actual function, not security, control, not protection, selection, not defense, quiet justice that operates through mechanical systems people don't understand. That's what the gates do. That's what William operates. That's what he's learning step by step as he documents the patterns and realizes what they mean.
March 13th, 48. William is in gatehouse, observing courtyard. About 50 people are present. Servants, craftsmen, merchants selling goods. Normal daily activity. Then horn sounds. Pattern William recognizes. South gate close pattern. He activates mechanism. South gate closes, trapping everyone in courtyard. People notice, look around confused. Why did gate close? No announcement, no explanation. They wait, uncertain. Then another horn. North gate open. William activates mechanism. North gate opens. The Baron's steward appears at North gate, calls names. 5 people. They approach. Steward allows them through North gate toward main hall. Gate closes behind them. Remaining 45 people are still trapped, still confused, still waiting. Another horn. East gate open. Guards appear, call more names. 10 people. They're escorted through East gate toward barracks. Some go willingly, others resist. Guards force them. Gate closes. 35 people remain, increasingly nervous now. They don't know what's happening, don't know why they're trapped, don't know what categories they're in, don't know which horn patterns mean what, just know gates are moving, people are being sorted, some removed, others capped, and they don't control any of it, don't understand the signals, can't predict what happens next. That uncertainty is terrifying. That lack of understanding is control. That's how the system works, through keeping people ignorant of the mechanisms, through not explaining the horn signals, through making gate movements seem arbitrary when they're actually carefully controlled, through sorting people into categories they don't know exist. That's the quiet justice. That's what William is operating. That's what disturbs him.
After 20 minutes, another horn sounds. South gate open. Remaining 35 people are released. They leave quickly, confused, frightened, not sure what just happened. The 5 who went through North Gate were accused criminals, being taken to trial. The 10 through East Gate were suspected conspirators, being detained for questioning. The 35 released were innocent bystanders who needed to be held while the accused were removed. William learns this later, learns the categories, learns that horn signals are precise instructions about which category to trap and where to send them. The system is sophisticated, the mechanisms are precise, the control is absolute,
and it all operates through horn signals that only gatekeepers and leadership understand. Everyone else is subject to a system they can't comprehend, subject to mechanical sorting they can't predict, subject to gates that trap or release them based on categories they don't know they're in. That's the power. That's the control. That's what William is learning. That his position isn't about security, it's about operating a mechanical system that enforces social control through information asymmetry, through keeping the rules secret, through making justice appear mechanical rather than intentional, through hiding human decisions behind automatic gate movements that seem impersonal. That's what the hidden pins do. Make control look mechanical, make judgment look automatic, make intentional sorting look like castle defense system. That's the deception. That's the quiet part. That's what William is recognizing as he learns the patterns and realizes what they mean.
If you're feeling that recognition of how mechanical systems enforce social hierarchies, how information asymmetry creates control, how not understanding the rules makes you vulnerable to being sorted and trapped, that's exactly why I make these videos. The way access control becomes people control when mechanisms are hidden. Subscribe to Quiet Manor Story if you want to see how William navigates this knowledge, and share your thoughts about modern equivalents where not knowing how systems work makes you subject to control. April. William is teaching new gate guard the horn patterns. Young man named Thomas, 20 years old, eager to learn. William shows him the mechanisms, the hidden pins, the counterweights, how horn signals activate specific pins that release specific gates. Thomas is fascinated. This is ingenious, perfect defensive system. Enemy couldn't predict gate movements, couldn't coordinate attacks. Brilliant design. William nods, doesn't say what he's thinking, that defense isn't the real purpose, that the system's sophistication serves control rather than security, that enemies aren't the main targets, that castle residents are. But William doesn't explain this yet, just teaches Thomas the mechanical operations, how to recognize horn patterns, how to activate correct mechanisms, how to ensure gates respond properly. Thomas learns quickly, is competent operator within weeks. Then William starts showing him the patterns, the sorting, the categorization, points out how gates are used daily for internal control rather than occasional defense, shows Thomas his documentation, the notes about who gets trapped when, the categories William has identified, the system of quiet justice operating through mechanical means. Thomas is shocked. But this isn't defense, this is control. This is using security mechanisms to trap people, to sort them without their knowledge, to enforce rules they don't understand. That's not what I thought we were doing. William agrees. That's what I thought too, when I started. Took me weeks to recognize the pattern, to understand what we're actually operating. We're not defending castle, we're controlling population. We're sorting people. We're enforcing hierarchy through mechanical means that hide the human decisions. That's our actual function.
Thomas is troubled, wants to refuse, wants to not participate, wants to tell people how the system works, wants to explain the horn signals, wants to make the hidden mechanisms visible. William understands, felt same impulse, but explains why that's impossible. If we explain the system, we're executed for revealing castle secrets. If we refuse to operate gates, we're replaced and probably imprisoned. If we try to warn people when they're being trapped, we're conspiring with criminals. Our only safe option is operating the system as designed. That's what keeps us alive. That's what's required for survival. I'm teaching you this not to recruit you into conspiracy against it, but to help you understand what you're actually doing so you can navigate it safely. That's all I can do. Make you aware, help you understand, show you the reality. But I can't change the system, can't stop operating it, can't reveal it publicly, can only document it privately and help you recognize what we're participating in. That's the limit of what's possible. That's what I'm offering. Awareness without options, knowledge without power to act on it, understanding without ability to change things. That's what we have. That's what I'm giving you. Thomas accepts this, reluctantly, understands he's trapped like William, trapped by position, trapped by knowledge, trapped by participating in system he now recognizes as unjust but can't refuse without destroying himself. That's the position, that's the bind, that's what William and Thomas share. Operating system they recognize as control mechanism, unable to refuse, unable to reveal, unable to change, just operating, just surviving, just maintaining the quiet justice that operates through horn signals and hidden pins and mechanical gates that trap people who don't understand the categories they're in. That's their position, that's their shared burden, that's what makes them accomplices, not through choosing evil, but through being trapped in.
Positions that require operating evil systems. That's how quiet justice maintains itself, through trapping the operators, through making refusal equivalent to suicide, through ensuring the people who run mechanisms recognize their function but can't stop running them. That's William and Thomas. That's their accommodation. That's their survival strategy. Operate the system, understand its injustice, document its patterns, help each other navigate it, but don't try to change it, don't try to reveal it, don't try to stop it, just survive it. That's their resolution, that's their compromise, that's their complicity.
May. The Black Death arrives. Plague reaches Thornfield Keep. People start dying, dozens within first week. The Baron responds with quarantine protocols, orders courtyard gates used to enforce isolation. Infected people are trapped in courtyard. Specific horn pattern sounds. All gates close. Infected are sealed in courtyard. Left there. Not treated, not fed consistently. Not removed. Just trapped. Dying in locked space, while healthy people inside castle and outside walls continue normal activities. The gates become death sentence. The horn signal becomes execution order. The hidden mechanisms become apparatus of mass death. William operates this, activates the mechanisms, closes the gates, traps the infected, maintains the quarantine, watches people die in courtyard that's become open-air prison. The horn signals sound daily, sometimes multiple times. Each time more infected people are driven into courtyard. Gates close, trap them. They join the dying. The dying join the dead. The dead accumulate. Nobody removes them. Too dangerous. Too many. Just leave them. Let plague run course. Then clear the bodies. That's the policy. That's what William enforces through mechanical means. The gates move on hidden pins. The infected are trapped. The system operates efficiently. Death is organized mechanically. Justice is quiet. Execution is automatic. Nobody has to order deaths individually. Just sound horn pattern. Gates close. The infected are removed from population. Dying is mechanical process. Death is systematic outcome. That's how it works. That's what William operates. That's what plague reveals about what the gate mechanisms can do when used at scale, when operated ruthlessly, when deployed as killing apparatus. That's always what they were, always what they could do. Plague just makes it visible, makes it obvious, makes it undeniable that the gates are control mechanisms, capable of mass death when operated according to certain patterns, for certain purposes. William knew.
This, theoretically, understood gates could trap and kill. But seeing it, operating it, watching hundreds die because he activated mechanisms that sealed them in courtyards, that's different. That's visceral. That's unbearable knowledge. That's what breaks William's comfortable accommodation. That's what makes surviving through operating the system feel impossible. That's what creates crisis. Not abstract understanding of injustice. Concrete participation in mass death. Not theoretical complicity. Actual operation of killing apparatus. That's what plague reveals. That's what William faces. That's what destroys his ability to maintain comfortable operation of unjust system. He can't do it anymore. Can't activate mechanisms that trap infected. Can't close gates that become death chambers. Can't operate system that's revealed itself as mass killing apparatus. That's his breakdown. That's his refusal. That's his crisis. He tells Thomas, "I can't do this anymore. Can't operate gates that trap people to die. Can't activate mechanisms that create death chambers. can't participate in systematic killing. I know refusing means execution or imprisonment. I know not operating gates means being replaced. I know this changes nothing. Someone else will activate mechanisms if I don't. But I can't keep doing it. Can't keep being operator of death apparatus. Can't maintain that complicity. Even if refusal accomplishes nothing except my destruction. Even if someone else immediately takes position and continues operations. Even if my protest is completely ineffective, I still can't continue. That's my line. That's my limit. That's what I can't accommodate. Participating in mass death, operating killing mechanisms, activating apparatus that traps people to die. That's too much. That's beyond what survival is worth. That's where I refuse, even though refusal is meaningless. That's my position. Thomas understands, respects it, but argues. Your refusal changes nothing. Someone else operates gates. Infected still get trapped, still die. Your sacrifice accomplishes nothing except removing you from position where you could potentially help, where you could potentially operate gates in ways that reduce harm, where you could potentially use your knowledge to save some people. By refusing completely, you abandon ability to do anything. You become useless. You make yourself martyr who accomplished nothing. Better to stay, continue operating, use knowledge to help where possible, accept complicity, but try to minimize harm within constraints. That's more useful than refusing and accomplishing nothing except own destruction. That's utilitarian argument. That's practical wisdom. That's accommodation that William has maintained until now. But plague has broken something, has made that accommodation impossible, has revealed clearly that operating the system means participating in mass killing. That participating
in mass killing is unacceptable, regardless of whether refusal accomplishes anything. That some things are too evil to participate in, even when non-participation is pointless. That's William's position now. That's his transformation. That's his refusal. He won't operate the gates anymore, won't activate mechanisms that trap infected, won't participate in systematic death. That refusal will destroy him, will accomplish nothing except his own execution or imprisonment, will change nothing about plague response, will save nobody, will just remove William from position. But he's making it anyway, making pointless refusal, making meaningless protest, making useless gesture of conscience, because some participation is too compromising, because some complicity is too complete, because some evil is too great to accommodate, even when refusing accomplishes nothing. That's William's judgment. That's his final position. That's his choice.
He refuses, stops operating gates, stops activating mechanisms, stops responding to horn signals. The Baron's steward notices within hours, summons William. Why aren't you operating gates? Why aren't mechanisms responding? Why are you refusing duties? William explains, I can't operate apparatus that traps people to die, can't activate mechanisms that create death chambers, can't participate in systematic killing. I'm refusing. I know consequences. I accept them, but I won't continue operations. The steward is incredulous. You're refusing essential plague control measures, refusing orders that protect healthy population, refusing duties that maintain castle security. That's treason. That's mutiny. That's refusing lawful commands during emergency. You'll be executed for this. You understand that. Your refusal accomplishes nothing except your death. Someone else operates gates immediately. Infected still get trapped. Plague control continues. Your protest is completely meaningless. You're dying for nothing. William knows. I'm dying for refusing to participate in something I find unacceptable. That's not nothing to me. That's maintaining conscience. That's preserving sense of myself as someone who won't do certain things, regardless of consequences. That's worth dying for, even if it changes nothing practical. That's my judgment. That's my choice. Execute me for it, but I won't resume operations. The steward has William arrested, imprisoned, replaced. Thomas becomes head gatekeeper,
continues operations. Gates trap infected. People die. System functions. William accomplished nothing except removing himself, except refusing complicity, except maintaining principle. That's his achievement. Meaningless achievement from practical perspective. Everything about plague response continues unchanged. But meaningless achievement from William's perspective. He didn't participate, didn't operate killing apparatus, didn't accommodate mass death, maintained refusal even when
Pointless. That's what he achieved. That's his victory over complicity. That's his resolution. Useless martyrdom, pointless principle, meaningful refusal. That's who William became. That's how he responded when system revealed itself clearly as death apparatus. He refused. Even knowing refusal accomplished nothing, even accepting that someone else would immediately continue operations, even understanding his protest was completely ineffective, he refused anyway. Because some things are too evil to participate in. Because some complicity is too complete. Because some accommodation is too much. That's William's lesson. That's his teaching. That's what he demonstrates through meaningless refusal that accomplishes nothing except preserving his conscience.
Thomas operates the gates, takes William's position, activates mechanisms when horns sound, traps infected in Courtyard, maintains plague quarantine, does what William refused to do. Thomas isn't happy about it, isn't comfortable with it, just does it because refusing means dying like William will die, and accomplishing nothing like William accomplished nothing, except removing himself from position where he might potentially reduce harm. Thomas chooses utilitarian accommodation, chooses complicity that preserves ability to act, chooses participating in evil system with goal of minimizing evil within constraints, rather than refusing system completely and accomplishing nothing except self-destruction. That's his calculation. That's his justification. That's how he maintains operation of gates that trap people to die. By telling himself he's choosing lesser evil. By believing staying in position allows possibility of helping. By convincing himself that principled refusal, like William's, is actually less moral than complicit participation that preserves capacity for occasional mercy. That reasoning allows Thomas to continue, allows him to activate mechanisms, allows him to trap infected, allows him to participate in systematic death. He does it, functions as William's replacement, operates the death apparatus, but differently, with different approach, with different understanding of what he's doing. William operated gates while becoming increasingly aware of injustice, until awareness became unbearable and he refused. Thomas operates gates while consciously aware of injustice, but choosing to participate anyway, because he judges participation as more useful than refusal. That conscious choosing while aware makes Thomas more corrupted than William ever was. William was learning, discovering, becoming conscious, then refusing when consciousness became complete. Thomas is already conscious, already aware, chooses complicity with full knowledge. That's different corruption. That's more complete accommodation. That's deeper moral compromise. That's what makes Thomas more dangerous and more valuable to the system than William was. Thomas won't break, won't refuse, won't have crisis of conscience, because he's already made peace with participating in evil, already accepted that accommodation is wisdom, already decided that utilitarian calculus justifies complicity. That makes him reliable operator. That makes him safe choice. That makes him exactly what the Baron needs. Someone who'll operate death apparatus efficiently while maintaining awareness that it's death apparatus and accepting that operation is justified by circumstances. That's Thomas. That's his position. That's his accommodation that's more complete than William's ever was.
June. Thomas is operating gates during plague quarantine. Horn sounds. Southgate close pattern. Thomas activates mechanism. Gate closes. 30 infected people are trapped in Courtyard. They scream, beg, plead to be released. Thomas watches, does nothing, must maintain quarantine, must keep gates closed, must let them die there. That's his duty. That's what he accepted. That's what he's doing. One woman approaches the gatehouse, stands below where Thomas can see her. She's crying. "Please, my children are outside the gates, healthy, uninfected. They need me. I know I'm sick. I know I'll die. But let me out. Let me say goodbye. Let me hold them once more before I die alone in Courtyard with strangers. Please, this is my last request. Grant me mercy. Open gate for 2 minutes. Let me embrace my children. Then I'll return. I'll die here. I just need to say goodbye." Thomas is moved, wants to help, wants to grant mercy. This is exactly the situation he told William staying in position would allow him to address. Woman asking for a small mercy that wouldn't compromise quarantine significantly. 2 minutes, quick goodbye, then return. What harm would it do? Thomas considers, calculates, weighs risks and benefits. Opening gate violates quarantine protocol, creates precedent, shows mercy is possible, encourages others to ask, makes maintaining strict quarantine harder. But denying this request makes Thomas complicit in cruelty that serves no protective purpose. Woman will die either way. Children will lose mother either way. Allowing goodbye doesn't increase risk, just provides comfort, just grants dignity, just recognizes humanity. That's what Thomas told himself he'd do. Use discretion, grant mercy, reduce harm. This is perfect opportunity, clear case, no real cost, just kindness. Thomas should open gate, should allow goodbye, should demonstrate that his accommodation allows beneficial outcomes that William's refusal prevented. That's the test. That's the moment. That's
where Thomas proves his utilitarian reasoning was correct.
He doesn't open the gate, refuses the woman, explains protocol must be maintained, quarantine must be absolute, no exceptions, no mercy, no flexibility. She dies in the courtyard 3 days later, never seeing her children again, never saying goodbye, dying alone among strangers, while her children wait outside gates, crying for mother they can see but can't reach. Thomas watches this, watches woman die, watches children grieve, watches outcome of his refusal, and he understands. His utilitarian reasoning was fraud. His accommodation was cowardice. His staying in position didn't allow mercy, didn't reduce harm, didn't provide opportunity to help, just made him complicit in cruelty without offering any compensating benefit. He refused mercy in exactly the situation where granting it would have cost nothing and helped enormously. Refused because granting mercy is harder than maintaining strict protocol, because flexibility requires judgment and risk, because showing kindness means taking responsibility, because accommodation is easier than discretion. Thomas realizes he was lying to himself. His reasoning about staying in position to help was self-deception, was justification for cowardice, was excuse for complicity, was rationalization that allowed him to accept position without accepting moral weight of what position requires. Woman's death reveals this, makes Thomas see himself clearly, makes him recognize that he won't grant mercy, won't use discretion, won't help people, will just operate mechanisms, will just maintain protocol, will just follow orders. His accommodation doesn't allow beneficial outcomes, just allows him to participate in evil while telling himself he's doing so for good reasons. That's revealed fraud. That's exposed lie. That's what woman's death teaches Thomas about himself, that his utilitarian reasoning was rationalization, that his staying in position accomplished nothing except his own complicity, that William's refusal was morally superior.
Despite being practically useless, because William at least maintained integrity, maintained consistency between values and actions, maintained refusal to participate in evil. Thomas has none of that, has complicity without compensation, has participation without mitigation, has accommodation without benefit, just operates death apparatus while lying to himself about why. That's what he sees. That's what breaks through his self-deception. That's what reveals his corruption as more complete than William's ever was. Because William became conscious and refused, Thomas became conscious and accommodated. That accommodation is worse. That's the revelation. That's the recognition. That's what destroys Thomas's comfortable rationalization.
If you're feeling that recognition of how utilitarian reasoning becomes self-deception, how accommodation becomes rationalization for complicity, how staying in positions to help from within often just means participating without actually helping, that's exactly why I make these videos. It's about times you've seen people justify participation through reasoning that proved fraudulent.
July. Plague kills half the castle population. Hundreds dead. The courtyard is full of bodies. The gates have been operating constantly, trapping infected, isolating dying, creating death chambers. The mechanisms have been efficient. The horn signals have been precise. The system has functioned exactly as designed. Thomas has operated it faithfully, activated mechanisms, closed gates, trapped people, watched them die, maintained protocol, followed orders, been reliable operator, done everything required, accomplished nothing beneficial, granted no mercy, helped nobody, just participated, just complied, just operated apparatus. That's his achievement. That's what his accommodation produced. Perfect compliance, zero mercy, complete complicity, no mitigation, no benefit, no justification. Just operation of death apparatus by someone who knew what he was doing and chose to do it anyway, while lying to himself about reasons. That's Thomas. That's his legacy. That's what Plague reveals about his character, that he'll operate evil systems efficiently, while maintaining self-deception about his own morality. That's worse than William's complicity. William became conscious and refused. Thomas became conscious and continued. That continuation while aware is deeper corruption, is more complete moral failure, is worse accommodation than unconscious participation. Thomas knows this now, knows he's worse than William, knows his reasoning was fraud, knows his accommodation accomplished nothing except his own corruption. But he continues anyway, continues operating gates, continues trapping people, continues maintaining system, because stopping now would mean William's refusal was right, would mean Thomas's criticism of William was wrong, would mean admitting his accommodation was pure cowardice, rather than utilitarian wisdom. Thomas can't admit that, can't accept that judgment of himself, can't acknowledge that William was braver and more moral, despite being practically useless. So,
Thomas continues, maintains operations, keeps lying to himself, keeps operating mechanisms, keeps participating in evil while pretending he's doing so for good reasons that don't actually exist and never did. That's his resolution. That's his accommodation to recognition of his own corruption. Continue lying to himself, continue operating, continue accommodating, continue being worse than William while pretending he's better. That's Thomas. That's his pattern. That's his corruption that's more complete than William's because it's conscious and chosen and maintained through systematic self-deception that Thomas knows is self-deception but maintains anyway because admitting truth would be unbearable. That's deepest corruption. That's worst accommodation. That's most complete moral failure. Knowing you're lying to yourself and continuing anyway because truth is too painful. That's Thomas. That's what he becomes. That's what Plague reveals about what he is.
William is executed in August. Public execution. Hung in courtyard, in space where infected died. His body left hanging. Warning. Example. Demonstration of what happens to those who refuse lawful orders. Thomas watches. Must watch. Is required to attend. Stands in courtyard looking up at William's body. William refused, accomplished nothing, died anyway, failed to stop anything, failed to save anyone, failed to change anything. His refusal was completely pointless from practical perspective, accomplished only his own death. Thomas was right about that. William's refusal was useless. But Thomas was wrong about everything else. Wrong that accommodation would allow mercy. Wrong that staying in position would provide opportunities to help. Wrong that utilitarian reasoning justified complicity. Wrong that his participation was morally superior to William's refusal. All wrong. All self-deception. All rationalization. William's useless martyrdom is morally superior to Thomas's useless compliance. William maintained integrity. Thomas maintains corruption. William refused evil. Thomas participates in it. William died for principle. Thomas lives through cowardice. That's what Thomas sees looking at William's body. That William was right. That refusal, even pointless refusal, is morally superior to complicity, even complicity justified by utilitarian reasoning. That sometimes maintaining integrity is more important than maintaining position. That sometimes refusing evil is more important than accomplishing anything practical. That some things are too evil to participate in, regardless of whether refusing accomplishes anything. That's what William's body teaches Thomas. That's what execution demonstrates. That pointless martyrdom is better than successful accommodation. That dying for principle is better than living through corruption. That William was right and Thomas was wrong. That's unbearable recognition. That's crushing awareness. That's what destroys Thomas's remaining
self-deception. William is dead and Thomas is alive, but William is morally superior. William accomplished nothing and Thomas is useful, but William is better. William refused and died while Thomas accommodated and survived, but William made correct choice. That's what Thomas must accept. That's what William's execution forces him to recognize, that William was right, that Thomas was wrong, that everything Thomas told himself to justify his accommodation was lie, that his reasoning was fraud, that his utilitarian calculus was self-deception, that his criticism of William was projection, that his accommodation was pure cowardice disguised as wisdom. All of that is revealed by William's hanging body. All of that is proved by Thomas's continued operation of gates that trapped people, including William. All of that is demonstrated by comparison between William's useless principled refusal and Thomas's useful unprincipled compliance. Thomas sees it, can't unsee it, can't maintain self-deception, can't pretend anymore. William's body is evidence, is proof, is demonstration, is teaching, is revelation, is condemnation of Thomas's every choice and every rationalization and every accommodation. That's what hangs in the courtyard. Not just William's body, Thomas's judgment, Thomas's conviction, Thomas's sentence. He's guilty, more guilty than William, more corrupted, more compromised, more complicit, and alive while William is dead. That life is worse punishment than death. That survival through accommodation is worse fate than dying for principle. That's what Thomas learns. That's what William's execution teaches. That Thomas chose wrong. That accommodation was worse than refusal. That he's worse than William despite being more useful. That his practical success is moral failure. That his survival is condemnation. That living with corruption is worse than dying for integrity. That's the lesson. That's the teaching. That's what hanging body reveals about quiet justice.
Survival. That surviving through accommodation is worse than dying through refusal. that useful compliance is worse than useless martyrdom, that Thomas's position is worse than William's body. That's what Courtyard demonstrates. That's what execution teaches. That's what Thomas must live with. William is dead. Thomas is alive. William is better. Thomas is worse. That's the comparison. That's the judgment. That's the permanent truth.
September. The plague subsides. Fewer new cases. Fewer deaths. The quarantine protocols relax. The gates stop being used constantly. The courtyard is cleared of bodies. The castle begins recovering. Thomas continues operating gates, continues activating mechanisms, continues responding to horn signals, but differently now, haunted now, crushed now, aware now, fully aware that he's operating apparatus he should refuse, operating system that's evil, participating in quiet justice that's injustice, maintaining mechanisms that control and trap and kill, doing all of it while knowing it's wrong, while knowing William was right to refuse, while knowing his own accommodation was cowardice, but continuing anyway, because admitting William was right means admitting Thomas wasted opportunity, wasted year, wasted position, wasted chance to be like William, chose wrong path, made wrong choice, became wrong person. Thomas can't admit that fully, can't accept complete judgment of himself. So he continues operations, continues lying to himself that somehow his participation still makes sense, still serves some purpose, still accomplishes something, even though he knows it doesn't, knows it's pure rationalization, knows it's self-deception, knows William was right, but continues anyway, because stopping would require accepting complete moral failure. That's worse than continuing. That's unbearable. So Thomas continues, operates gates, activates mechanisms, maintains system, lives with knowing he's wrong, but doing it anyway. That's his position. That's his accommodation to awareness. Not refusing like William, not being destroyed by consciousness like Michel the physician, just continuing while aware, continuing while knowing it's wrong, continuing while maintaining minimal self-deception that prevents complete breakdown. That's Thomas. That's his pattern. That's his survival. Not comfortable accommodation, not successful rationalization, just barely functioning.
Continuation while aware of own corruption and moral failure and wrongness. That's worst position. That's most corrupted state. Worse than William, who became aware and refused. Worse than Michael, who became aware and was destroyed. Thomas becomes aware and continues. That's deepest corruption. That's most complete moral failure. Conscious, continued participation in evil, while knowing it's evil, and knowing refusal would be right, and knowing accommodation is wrong. That's Thomas. That's what he becomes. That's what he maintains. That's how he survives. Through continuing while aware, through operating while conscious, through participating while knowing. That's his fate. That's his punishment. That's what's worse than William's death. Living with that, continuing with that, surviving with that. That's quiet justice's victory. Creating operator so corrupted he continues functioning while knowing he's wrong, while knowing he should refuse, while knowing William was right, but continuing anyway, because admitting complete failure is unbearable. That's deepest control. That's most complete corruption. That's system's perfect success. Operator who knows he's operating evil system and continues anyway. That's Thomas. That's what he becomes. That's what Plague and William's execution create. Perfect corrupted operator. Conscious, aware, knowing, corrupted, participating, continuing, surviving. That's worst fate. That's most complete defeat. That's what happens when awareness doesn't lead to refusal, but to continued accommodation, maintained through minimal self-deception that prevents breakdown,
but allows continued operation. That's Thomas's position. That's his achievement. That's his fate. Continuing while knowing he shouldn't. Operating while aware he's wrong. Surviving while recognizing William was right. That's his punishment. That's his sentence. That's his life. Worse than death. Worse than refusal. Worse than any alternative. Just continuing.
Just operating. Just surviving. While knowing. While aware. While conscious. That's Thomas. That's the end of his arc. Not breakdown. Not refusal. Not redemption. Just continued operation while aware. That's worst outcome. That's most corrupted state. That's deepest accommodation. That's what systems create when they successfully corrupt operators completely. Operators who know they're wrong and continue anyway. That's Thomas. That's his legacy. That's his resolution.
1349. Thomas continues operating gates. Has been doing so for years since replacing William. The mechanisms still move on hidden pins. The horns still sound patterns only gatekeepers understand. The courtyard still functions as sorting space where people get trapped based on categories they don't know they're in. Plague is over, but the gates remain. The control mechanisms persist. The quiet justice continues. Thomas operates it, activates mechanisms when horns sound, traps people who need trapping according to Baron's judgment, releases people who should be released, sorts categories, enforces hierarchies, maintains system, does it all while knowing it's wrong, while knowing William was right to refuse, while knowing his own accommodation is cowardice, but continuing anyway. That's his pattern for year. That's his maintained position. That's his survival through conscious corruption that he can't escape and won't refuse. That year of continuation while aware creates something in Thomas. Not breakdown, not refusal, not redemption, but transformation. Slow change, gradual shift. Not in what he does, he continues operating gates exactly as required, but in how he thinks about it, how he understands it, how he relates to it. The conscious awareness that destroyed Mickle the physician and motivated William's refusal doesn't destroy or motivate Thomas, just changes him, makes him into something different, something worse maybe, or something that's learned to survive awareness without either refusing or being destroyed by it. That's Thomas's transformation. That's what year of conscious corruption creates. Not resolution, not accommodation, not breakthrough, just changed person who continues operating evil system while knowing it's evil and maintaining minimal cognitive coherence through mechanism Thomas develops over year of conscious participation. That mechanism is what Part 3 explores. That's the climax. That's the resolution. Understanding what Thomas becomes. How he survives awareness. What that survival costs. What it reveals about how people maintain participation in evil systems while conscious of their evil. That's the lesson. That's the teaching. That's what the final part documents.
Thomas starts teaching the system to others, not just mechanical operations like William taught him, but full understanding, complete awareness. He trains new guards in horn patterns and gate mechanisms, shows them how system works, then shows them what system does, explains sorting function, reveals categorization purpose, makes them aware that they're operating control apparatus rather than security system. That awareness teaching is new, is different from how William trained Thomas. William was discovering, was becoming conscious gradually, taught Thomas mechanics, then let Thomas discover purposes. Thomas teaches both simultaneously, teaches mechanics and purposes together, makes new operators immediately aware of what they're doing. That's deliberate, that's strategic, that's Thomas's accommodation to awareness. If he must operate evil system, he'll make everyone who operates it equally aware, will spread consciousness, will ensure nobody operates mechanisms unconsciously, will make complicity universal and conscious. That universalization of awareness is Thomas's revenge, his quiet rebellion, his accommodation that's also resistance. He can't refuse system, but he can make sure everyone operating it knows what they're doing, knows they're participating in evil, knows they're complicit.
can't claim ignorance, can't maintain comfortable unconsciousness, must operate while aware like Thomas operates, must survive awareness like Thomas survives, must develop mechanisms to maintain participation while conscious like Thomas developed. That spreading of awareness is Thomas's legacy, his teaching, his revenge on system that trapped him. He makes everyone equally aware, equally conscious, equally corrupted. That universalization means nobody can judge him, nobody can claim moral superiority. Everyone is equally complicit. Everyone operates evil system while knowing it's evil. Everyone survives through the same compromises Thomas made. That equality of corruption is Thomas's
achievement, his resolution, his accommodation that's also protest. He can't refuse, but he can ensure everyone is equally guilty. That equality removes judgment, removes Thomas's unique shame, distributes corruption across all operators, makes evil a system maintained by army of conscious participants rather than unconscious tools. That's different kind of corruption. That's worse kind, maybe. Conscious collective complicity rather than unconscious individual participation. That's what Thomas creates. That's his transformation of the system. Not stopping it, not refusing it, not reforming it, just making it consciously evil rather than unconsciously maintained. That's his achievement. That's his revenge. That's his accommodation that's also resistance, through ensuring everyone who participates knows exactly what they're participating in.
The new operators respond differently to awareness. Some refuse, like William, get executed or imprisoned. System continues. Some accept, like Thomas initially did, develop rationalizations, maintain accommodation, continue operating while lying to themselves. Some accept, like Thomas now does, operate while aware, survive through maintaining minimal functionality while conscious of corruption. That last group grows. Thomas's teaching creates cohort of conscious corrupted operators, people who know they're wrong and continue anyway, who recognize system is evil and maintain it anyway, who understand they should refuse and accommodate anyway. That cohort is something new, is different from previous generation. Previous operators were mostly unconscious, operated without full awareness, could claim ignorance, could maintain comfortable lack of recognition about what they were doing. Thomas's teaching eliminates that, makes ignorance impossible, makes comfort unavailable, makes awareness mandatory. The new operators must choose consciously, must decide deliberately, must accommodate knowingly or refuse knowingly. Most choose accommodation. Most survive through conscious continuation while aware. Most become like Thomas, corrupted operators who know they're corrupted and continue anyway. That's the new normal. That's Thomas's legacy. That's what he creates through his teaching. Generation of conscious corruption. Collective accommodation while aware. Systematic participation in evil while knowing it's evil. That's worse than unconscious participation. That's deeper corruption. That's more complete accommodation. That's what Thomas produces. Not resistance, not reform, but transformation of evil system from unconsciously maintained to consciously maintained, from operated by people who don't fully understand to operated by people who understand completely and continue anyway. That's Thomas's achievement, making corruption conscious, making accommodation deliberate, making
evil system maintained by army of aware participants rather than unconscious tools. That's different kind of evil. That's worse evil, maybe, but also more honest evil, more aware evil, evil that can't claim ignorance. That's what Thomas creates. That's his transformation of the system he couldn't escape.
Thank you for staying with this difficult exploration of how conscious corruption differs from unconscious participation, how awareness without refusal creates worse evil, how systems are maintained by people who know they're wrong and continue anyway.
If this changed how you think about complicity and consciousness, about knowing participation versus unknowing tools, about how awareness can make evil worse rather than better, subscribe to Quiet Manor Story and share your thoughts. Where do you see conscious corruption maintaining evil systems? How do people survive awareness without refusing? What mechanisms allow continued participation while knowing? I genuinely want to hear your reflections on these questions that have no comfortable answers.
1352. 3 years after Thomas began teaching conscious corruption. The system operates smoothly. The gates still move on hidden pins. The horns still sound. The sorting still happens. But now every operator knows. Every gatekeeper understands. Every person activating mechanisms recognizes they're participating in evil system. That universal awareness doesn't stop system, doesn't reduce its function, doesn't limit its effectiveness. If anything, makes it more efficient. Conscious operators anticipate orders better, understand purposes more clearly, execute functions more precisely. The conscious corruption is more effective than unconscious operation. That's disturbing revelation. That's uncomfortable truth. That awareness makes people better at evil rather than preventing it. That knowledge of wrongness doesn't produce resistance, but produces more effective complicity. That understanding corruption leads to improved participation rather than refusal. That's what Thomas discovers. That's what his teaching reveals. That consciousness without refusal just makes corruption deeper, makes participation more effective, makes evil more successfully maintained. That's the lesson. That's the outcome. That's what 3 years of conscious corruption produces. A system that works better because operators understand it completely and maintain it deliberately rather than unconsciously and accidentally. That's worse outcome than unconscious maintenance. That's deeper evil. That's more complete corruption. That's what Thomas created through spreading awareness without spreading refusal, through teaching consciousness without teaching resistance, through making everyone aware without making anyone refuse. That awareness without refusal is worse than ignorance. That's the realization. That's the recognition. That's what Thomas finally understands after 3 years of conscious corruption teaching. That he made things worse, made evil more effective, made corruption more complete, made
systems stronger by making operators more aware. That awareness was supposed to be resistance, was supposed to be revenge, was supposed to undermine system by making everyone recognize its evil. Instead, strengthened system, made it more efficiently maintained, made it more perfectly operated, made it better evil. That's what consciousness without refusal produces. That's the outcome. That's the catastrophe of Thomas's approach. He thought making everyone aware would create resistance, created better compliance. Thought spreading consciousness would undermine system, strengthened it. Thought teaching recognition would produce refusal, produced more effective accommodation. That's complete failure of his strategy. That's total defeat of his approach. That's what makes Thomas realize finally that William was right about everything. That refusal, even pointless refusal, is morally superior to any form of participation, no matter how conscious or resistant that participation claims to be. That Thomas's teaching just made corruption worse, made accommodation more complete, made evil more successfully maintained. That recognition is final, devastating awareness. That understanding is crushing. That awareness is terminal. Thomas finally knows.
Finally sees, finally recognizes that William was right about everything. That refusal, even pointless refusal, is superior to any accommodation. That maintaining integrity through useless martyrdom is better than losing integrity through successful survival.
that dying for principle is better than living through corruption, that everything Thomas did was wrong, every choice, every accommodation, every teaching, every spreading of awareness, all wrong, all worsening rather than improving, all making evil more effective rather than undermining it. That's what Thomas finally understands. After 3 years, after teaching dozens of operators, after creating a system of conscious corruption, after making evil more efficiently maintained, that's when he finally knows, finally recognizes, finally sees completely that William was right, that Thomas was wrong, that everything Thomas did made things worse, that his survival through accommodation was complete moral failure, that his teaching was deepening corruption rather than resisting it, that his spreading of awareness was strengthening evil rather than undermining it, that consciousness without refusal is worse than unconscious participation, that aware complicity is deeper evil than ignorant operation, that Thomas created worse evil through trying to resist while participating than he would have by either refusing completely like William or remaining unconscious like earlier operators. That's complete recognition. That's total awareness. That's final understanding that destroys every rationalization Thomas maintained, every justification, every accommodation, every claim that his participation was resistance. All destroyed, all revealed as fraud, all proved wrong by 3 years of consequences that made systems stronger rather than weaker. That recognition is what Thomas can't survive. That awareness is what finally breaks him. Not immediate consciousness like William, not progressive recognition like Michel, but slow accumulation of evidence over 3 years that finally proves undeniably that Thomas was wrong about everything, that his approach failed completely, that his accommodations made things worse, that his teaching strengthened evil, that his consciousness deepened corruption, that everything he did was catastrophic failure masked as resistance. That's what finally destroys Thomas. That's what he can't survive. That's what breaks him completely after 3 years of maintaining functionality while aware. The proof that his awareness made things worse. The evidence that his teaching strengthened evil. The recognition that his approach was complete failure. That's terminal. That's unbearable. That's what Thomas can't accommodate. He accommodated his own corruption, accommodated William's superior morality, accommodated conscious participation in evil, but he can't accommodate that his accommodation made evil more effective, that his resistance strengthened what he was resisting, that his teaching produced opposite of what he intended, that his 3 years of conscious corruption created stronger evil system than unconscious operation would have maintained. That's too much. That's unbearable. That's what Thomas destroys Thomas, finally. He stops functioning, stops operating gates, stops activating mechanisms, stops teaching new operators, just stops. Doesn't refuse formally like William, just stops responding, stops participating, stops existing functionally, breaks down completely. Not from initial awareness like Michel, not from principled refusal like William, but from accumulated evidence that his accommodation made things worse, that his survival through consciousness created deeper evil, that his teaching strengthened what he was supposed to resist, that recognition is too devastating, that awareness is too crushing, that understanding is too complete. Thomas can't function under weight of recognizing he made things worse, made evil more effective, strengthened system through trying to undermine it, created conscious corruption that operates more efficiently than unconscious participation. That's unbearable recognition. That's catastrophic awareness. That's terminal understanding. Thomas breaks, completely, finally, after 3 years of maintaining functionality while aware, after spreading consciousness to dozens of operators, after creating system of deliberate evil maintenance, after teaching awareness without refusal, after making corruption conscious and effective, after all of that, he breaks, recognizes complete failure,
understands total defeat, sees catastrophic consequences of his approach, can't survive that recognition, can't function under that weight, can't maintain any accommodation to awareness that proves his accommodation was worse than any alternative. He breaks, stops, ends. Not through death like William, not through physical destruction like Michelle, but through complete psychological collapse, under weight of recognizing he made evil more effective through trying to resist it while participating in it. That's his ending. That's his fate. That's his resolution. Complete breakdown from accumulated awareness that his approach was catastrophic failure. That consciousness, without refusal, just makes evil more efficient. That teaching awareness without teaching resistance just creates more effective corruption. That spreading guilt without producing refusal just makes systems stronger. That was Thomas's lesson. That was his discovery. That was what 3 years of conscious corruption teaching revealed. That awareness makes evil worse when awareness doesn't produce refusal. That consciousness strengthens corruption when consciousness is used to justify participation rather than motivate resistance. That knowing you're wrong and continuing anyway is worse than not knowing and participating unconsciously. That deliberate evil is worse than unconscious evil. That conscious corruption is deeper than ignorant complicity. All of that Thomas learned. All of that Thomas proved through 3 years of operation and teaching. All of that destroyed him finally when accumulated evidence made it undeniable. That's his story. That's his arc. That's his resolution. Breakdown from awareness that his accommodation was worse than any alternative, that his consciousness made evil more effective, that his teaching strengthened what he should have refused, that William's pointless martyrdom was superior to Thomas's useful survival, that refusal, even useless refusal, is better than any form of participation, no matter how conscious or resistant. That's what Thomas finally knew. That's what destroyed him. That's his ending. Complete psychological collapse from recognizing catastrophic failure of his approach. That's the climax. That's the resolution. That's what happens when consciousness without refusal produces 3 years of evidence that awareness just makes evil more effective. Thomas can't survive that, can't accommodate that, can't maintain functionality under that recognition. He breaks. That's his fate. That's justice, maybe. That's the outcome of conscious corruption maintained for 3 years, while teaching others to maintain it. Complete breakdown from
Recognizing complete failure. That's Thomas's ending.
The system continues. Thomas is replaced. New gatekeeper takes position, continues operations. Gates still move on hidden pins. Horns still sound. Sorting still happens. Courtyard still functions as control mechanism. Nothing changes from Thomas's breakdown. Nothing stops from Thomas's recognition. Nothing reforms from Thomas's failure. System persists, operates, functions, maintained now by the conscious corrupted operators Thomas taught, maintained by people who know they're wrong and continue anyway, maintained by deliberate evil participation rather than unconscious complicity. That's Thomas's legacy, not resistance, not reform, not improvement, but transformation of unconscious evil system into conscious evil system, transformation that made evil more effective, made corruption more complete, made quiet justice more perfectly maintained. That's what Thomas accomplished. That's what his 3 years created. Conscious evil, deliberate corruption, knowing participation, system maintained by aware operators who recognize they're wrong and continue anyway. That's worse system. That's deeper evil. That's more complete corruption. That's what survives Thomas. That's what continues after his breakdown. That's his permanent legacy. Making evil conscious without making anyone refuse, spreading awareness without producing resistance, teaching consciousness without motivating refusal, creating cohort of deliberately evil operators who maintain quiet justice knowingly rather than unconsciously. That cohort persists. That teaching continues. That conscious corruption becomes new normal, system operated by people who know what they're doing and do it anyway, who recognize they're wrong and continue anyway, who understand they should refuse and accommodate anyway. That's new pattern.
That's Thomas's transformation of the system, from unconsciously maintained to consciously maintained, from ignorant evil to deliberate evil, from unconscious complicity to knowing participation.
That transformation is Thomas's permanent achievement. That's what survives him. That's what continues long after his breakdown. System of conscious corruption, pattern of aware evil, cohort of knowing participants, all maintaining quiet justice that operates through mechanical means people don't understand, while being maintained by operators who understand completely and maintain it deliberately. That's the pattern. That's the resolution. That's what persists. That's what horn signals and hidden pins reveal ultimately. That mechanical systems allow evil to appear impersonal. That hidden mechanisms make control seem automatic. That secret signals create information asymmetry that enables sorting and trapping. That conscious operators maintain those systems deliberately. That awareness doesn't prevent participation. That consciousness doesn't produce refusal. That knowing you're wrong doesn't stop you continuing. That deliberate evil is maintained by aware people who choose corruption consciously. That's how quiet justice works. That's how it survives. That's how it persists. Through mechanical systems that hide human decisions. Through automatic gates that conceal intentional sorting. Through horn patterns that only operators understand. And through operators who understand completely what they're doing and maintain system deliberately while knowing they're wrong. That's the mechanism. That's the pattern. That's the revelation. That quiet justice isn't maintained by unconscious tools, but by conscious participants. That evil systems persist through aware operators who choose corruption. That mechanical apparatus allows that choice to seem less direct. That hidden mechanisms make participation seem less personal. That automatic gates make control seem less intentional. But underneath the mechanisms are people, conscious people, aware people, knowing people, who recognize they're maintaining evil and maintain it anyway, who understand they should refuse and accommodate.
Anyway, who see they're wrong and continue anyway. That's how it works. That's how it persists. That's what William discovered and refused. What Michelle discovered and was destroyed by. What Thomas discovered and tried to resist by spreading awareness. What the conscious, corrupted operators Thomas taught maintain deliberately. That's the system. That's the pattern. That's the resolution. Evil maintained by aware participants who know they're wrong and continue anyway. Quiet justice operated by conscious corruption. Mechanical control maintained by deliberate human choices. That's what survives. That's what persists. That's what the hidden pins and horn signals reveal when understood completely. That control appears mechanical, but is human. That systems appear automatic, but are maintained. That justice appears impersonal, but is deliberate. And that deliberate maintenance comes from aware operators who recognize corruption and maintain it anyway. That's the truth. That's the revelation. That's the lesson. That mechanical systems enable evil, but don't cause it. That human choices maintain corruption, but mechanisms hide those choices. That conscious participants operate systems while mechanisms make participation seem less direct. That awareness doesn't prevent evil, but sometimes makes it more effective. That consciousness without refusal just creates more efficient corruption. That knowing you're wrong and continuing anyway is how evil persists. Through people like Thomas. Through people like the operators he taught. Through people who understand and continue. Through awareness without resistance. Through consciousness without refusal. That's how quiet justice survives. That's how it persists. That's what it reveals ultimately about survival and complicity, and the difference between mechanical systems and human choices. Systems enable, mechanisms hide, but humans choose. Humans maintain. Humans continue, while aware, while conscious, while knowing.
That's the pattern.
That's the mechanism. That's the resolution. Human evil hidden behind mechanical systems. Human corruption maintained through automatic gates. Human choices concealed by horn signals and hidden pins. But always human underneath. Always chosen. Always maintained. Always continued. While aware. That's how it works. That's how it persists. That's what horns sounding and gates moving on hidden pins reveal about quiet justice and survival when understood completely.